Listen, I did film and television studies at university for 3 years. I spent hours reading countless books and articles on subjects spanning from film all the way to television. Not a single one mentioned Hugh Grant once.
I achieved the hardest qualification across any university or college ever, a 2-1 in history. Let me tell you, the only thing that I learned was that we, as a society, have a history of denying and neglecting Hugh Grant's artistic and cultural relevance, not just in this country, but in the entire world.
I met Oscar at a Hugh Grant-themed event I put on at the Students' Union.
It felt as though Diggory and I were the only ones there, and we agreed that there was a Hugh Grant-shaped hole in academia.
We decided to put it right ourselves. We want to show people that he's an icon in acting.
We want to show people he's more than just a bumbling posh guy.
I'm Diggory Waite.
And I'm Oscar Beardmore Gray. And this is...
Taking Hugh for Granted.
Hello and welcome to Taking Hugh for Granted, the podcast in which two Hugh Grant enthusiasts watch every single film starring Hugh Grant in the attempt to answer the simple question, is this film taking Hugh for granted? Is this film good on its own, or does it rely on the bumbling Brit for its acclaim? I'm Diggory Waite, and I'm joined as ever by my colleague and fellow Hugh Grant obsessive Oscar Beardmore Gray. Oscar, how are you doing today, mate?
I'm doing great, Diggs. How are you?
I'm very, very good because we're doing things a little bit differently today. It's the usual pod, it's the usual format. However, we have a very special guest. It's Jessica Waite. Jessica, how the hell are you doing today?
Oh, I'm delighted to be with my bro and my bro's mate on the best podcast of all time.
Oh, come on. What you mentioned the pod, so you've listened to the pod before?
At least once.
That's good. I can confirm that as well. And what do you think of Hugh Grant? Like, where do you stand on Hugh Grant? Are you like us? Are you Hugh Grant mad, or are you just like, oh, he's okay?
I'm absolutely Hugh Grant mad. I'm a Hugh Grant OG from his sort of, in my opinion, peak years of the 90s. I was probably watching his movies before you, Diggs. So
what was the first Hugh Grant film you ever watched? First time you saw Hugh?
Do you guys know when About a Boy came out? Because I think that was my first.
2002, around then, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I watched Notting Hill and About a Boy about the same time and then was hooked from then on. But About a Boy has a special place in my heart because it was the first one. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's a great film. And then after that, Notting Hill, diehard fan.
Well, you're not alone. Many people have watched those two films and been hooked for life, so...
Not you, though.
oh, excuse me. I think we'll see about that.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. Because, Jessica, what is your history then, deeper history with Notting Hill in particular?
Notting Hill, it's hard to know where to start. I fell in love with it as a young teen, I'd say a pre-teen, and it's been there for me ever since. It's been the Ben & Jerry's, that you need when you're sad in a breakup, or
Ben & Jerry's.
But also, like, it's, a film that you want to watch on a lazy Sunday afternoon, or if you're like, I need to watch something to go to sleep. I honestly must have seen that film 50 times. So I absolutely love it. Did you know that, Diggs? I've seen it that many times.
I am surprised because you're not like a massive film fan. So I'm surprised in that way, but I'm not surprised in the sense that, like...
Don't give that away. Makes me seem so lame.
I'll cut that.
It's like, I don't watch any films, only Notting Hill. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. Like, I'm not surprised in the fact that it is such comfort watching for loads of people. And I'm not surprised you love it because people who listen to this pod regularly will know that we have already reviewed Notting Hill. And when, Jessica, you listened to our review of Notting Hill, you weren't so pleased. You sent me a voice memo. Let me just play this first one of Jess's initial reaction to just the first little bit of listening to our review.
So we're driving to see Matt's family this weekend, so we decided to have Valentines Boxing Day podcast listen. We haven't got very far through. We just listened to the synopsis, which was very good. And now we just started listening. We honestly have not listened to very far, but I'm already outraged that Oscar... We haven't even got to what you think, Diggs, but that Oscar doesn't like Notting Hill.
Oh dear.
Yikes.
And already I thought to myself, hang on, well, Jess likes this film. She's already annoyed. And I thought of this idea. I was like, we can have her on and she can debate us as to why it was good. So I sent her that in a voice memo back. But she'd listened to the rest of the review by then, and things had escalated.
Thanks for the replies, Diggs. We listened to it all now, so we haven't had any spoilers. I have to say I'm furious. I was shaking my fist. I called Oscar a fuck. while we were listening, didn't I, Matt?
You certainly did.
Yeah,
I won't
I'm
say what you
pissed.
called Diggs.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you for why. The first hour of Notting Hill is the bit I like, and when it kicks off with the press, I switch it off. So fuck you all, and I'll no longer be listening.
Wow.
There you go. There you go. So the first and last day that you listened to the pod. Jess, do you remember sending those voice memos?
I remember the rage I felt. Because I was driving as well, and it was dangerous. Like, Oscar, that was dangerous that you did that.
I mean, this is not the first time that we've had people say that my reaction has nearly made them crash their car. My reaction to Sense and Sensibility as well nearly made my godmother crash her car in the Dartford Tunnel. So this is the second one. I'm sorry about that, but I'm putting drivers across the world at risk.
Need a trigger warning for drivers, don't you?
Exactly. We should put the beginning of every episode, not the music, but instead just being like, warning, if you are in a car right now, get out of the car. Take the keys out of the ignition and get out of the car. Get far away. So that was our episode. If you haven't already listened to it, that was our episode, our Valentine's Day episode last year. It's a year on now. We're taking another look at Notting Hill. I want to ask, have your opinions of the film changed at all? Oscar, maybe yours within the last year. Do you want to change your stance at all?
No.
Good. That's perfect, because let's have a listen to what Oscar said about the film last time.
I'm just going to say it. I did not like this film.
No way.
I didn't.
Mate, no way.
I felt it was flat, slow-paced. It was too similar to Four Weddings and a Funeral, and worse than Four Weddings and a Funeral. And this is going to sound like blasphemy, I didn't really like Hugh's performance in it.
Jess, I saw you listening to that with your head in your hands. What are your initial thoughts?
That was a roller coaster of emotions for me, and the saddest loop de loop or whatever was Hugh Grant's performance wasn't very good, because I fundamentally disagree, because this is the role where I fell in love with him as a character, as an actor as well. So that was really sad. Also, I would love to know, Oscar, whether you think, having watched it a year on, that it's worse than Four Weddings and a Funeral. That's a genuine question.
I think it is, just because we haven't seen Hugh Grant before on screen, really, or many people haven't, and there's a novelty to it. And I think that the story is more full than Notting Hill, and I just think that is the reason mainly why I think Four Weddings is better than Notting Hill. It's not necessarily Hugh in it, although I think I prefer Hugh in Four Weddings anyway. But I think it's not so much Hugh, it's the other stuff, if that makes sense.
Oh, my heart is breaking, because I really thought that was going to be like a humdinger of a question, to be like, no, it's grown on you, hasn't it? And it absolutely hasn't.
I don't know. I think this is bad, but I think I dislike the film more and more every time I watch it.
Oh my word!
Oh my god! It's getting worse.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse. What do you think? What do you think grates on you so much each time?
My main problem with the film is not so much Hugh Grant, really. It's actually Julia Roberts and the whole story, and the way that she just has no personality, and she really grates on me, because I just think that I hate the writing. I hate the way that she only answers in either single words or not full sentences. And I also just find that the whole Richard Curtis and Hugh Grant's world, which is like kind of like a posh elite's world living in Notting Hill, is tiring. I think it's just I'm not sure it's like aged that well. But I mean, Jess, you clearly think the opposite. So tell me why. Tell me why.
I just have so much to say. It's like, oh my God, where do you begin? So, well, first of all, I would say that it's better than Four Weddings and a Funeral, which I also watched recently, and I thought that the acting was hammy, the jokes were rubbish, and I hate Andy McDowell. So So in terms of the argument that Julia Roberts isn't really a likeable or full character, I don't think that Andy McDowell is better. But I kind of agree with you that Julia Roberts' character, there isn't like sort of much to it. But in a way, that kind of adds to it for me, because when I watch this film, I kind of feel like I'm watching a dream. So I'm watching, you know, when you like let your mind wander and you just think, God, imagine if, you know, I'm sat at work and then like Harry Styles walked in, which would be my equivalent, let's say. Or I was at my mate's birthday party, with the dinner party scene, and then my friend is dating Harry Styles and he comes in and I just have to pretend to be normal, which I, by the way, absolutely would not. And I would be Emma Chambers in that scene. It's just kind of like, in your mind, you don't know what that person is really like. So it's all about your reaction to them rather than about what they do or what they say. And you just think they're going to behave like a celebrity, which is exactly what she does. So I don't think it takes anything away from the story, because for me, the reason I like it and why I watch it so many times is because I really enjoy the sort of cocooning effect of like being in this dreamlike sequence, which I guess is like Richard Curtis's imagination of what it would be like to date a celebrity that just wanders into his life. And so all of these scenes of like, and what if they met my friends, and what if I had to go to her workplace, and all of those things, it's just like really hilarious and not very realistic, but that's sort of not the point at all. And it's why I really like it and find it so fun.
Yeah, because that's what we're saying about that, like that fancy dreamscape. Although now that you've said that you're like Emma Chambers in that scene, I'm just imagining your mate is dating Harry Styles, and you then take Harry Styles to the toilet and then don't leave until he's like, get out of here. And he's like,
oh my God, yeah. I mean, I feel like that would happen.
Exactly.
From my point of view, though, I think the sort of scenes with the friends and the dinner party scenes and all those guys, that is the most realistic and most compelling part of this film. Like, those are the people with the most full characters, the best writing, the people who you can actually believe are real people. But I do get your point that we're trying to imagine like a kind of fictional time where some person who is the most famous actress in the world just walks into your dining room kind of thing. So I do understand that.
I have to disagree with both of you on that count for that scene, because that scene for me is it has a huge part of Richard Curtis's writing which I absolutely hate, which is this obsession with shagging and how you look. And they're all sat around the table and they're all going, "Oh, I'm pathetic, I'm rubbish." And they're all not. They're all middle class, very happy, good group of friends, and they're all sat around. And the only thing they can say about themselves is they go, "Oh, I'm wobbly and no one wants to shag me because I've got wobbly bits." And that's like every single Richard Curtis character ever, and it's all about, am I shaggable? And it's just like,
it's interesting watching it as I would have been a young woman then, like, I would have been an early teen, and it did feel like, the Bridget Joneses of this world and all that sort of thing. It was quite a radical idea that women could be imperfect and still be lovable. And I know all the characters are doing it in that scene, but I think I found that much more reassuring than maybe we need that message today, if you know what I mean. But the kind of like the resonance is still there with me, so I still find it really nice and nostalgic. But you are right, referencing Bridget Jones, it's in every film, as you say, that Richard Curtis does. But I still love that scene. And to be fair, what you're saying, Oscar, about the friends, they are the best bit. And I was thinking about it today as I was watching Notting Hill. It's like Gavin and Stacey to me. So Gavin and Stacey themselves, the worst part of Gavin and Stacey, and and the friends and the other characters are the best bit.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Rhys Ifans is hilarious, so is Emma Chambers. Like, it's the dynamic, it's the plunging them back into reality from these like dreamlike sequences that is the best part of the film, I think. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, and I get that, but it's sort of like the same things there will apply to Oscar's thing as to why he doesn't like it.
It comes back to like the sort of idolized version of love and relationships that Richard Curtis has, that you can like in movies you can kind of fall in love with someone from just seeing them or speaking to them a dozen times, but in reality that's probably not true. You probably actually have to get to know someone before you fall in love with them. But I guess many people can fall in love with an idea of someone, but is that really the basis for a long and successful relationship? Probably not, but I guess we only have an hour and a half of a movie to sort of get that love or whatever.
We've got 2 hours. It's actually fucking long. That's another thing I hate about this fucking film. Just wrap it up in an hour and 40 max. I'm not having this for 2 hours, please.
It's true, it's too long. There are some key scenes that I like, and to be honest, I'd be happy with them. One of my favourite scenes is the press junket. And it really reminded, when he has to pretend to be the horse and hound journalist. And it's so funny, but Diggs, it reminds me of the time. So my favourite band used to be Coldplay. And on my first day of doing an internship at the BBC, Coldplay were doing a secret special concert at the BBC, and I found out about it, and it was like invite only. There was only going to be 30 people there, and I tried to break in because I wanted to see Coldplay. And I saw the back of Chris Martin's head before being escorted out, and I was like trying to make up why I should be there and like who I was waiting for and like all of this stuff, and I was led out by security, and that was the end of it. But that exhilarating moment of like, I'm going to see Julia Roberts and then I have to make up this character for myself. I feel like I've experienced it in my most exciting moments in life. So I loved it.
But Hugh Grant wasn't escorted out after and yelling, "Chris Martin, I love you."
Now I'm just imagining, because I know Diggory is also a big Coldplay fan. I'm just trying to imagine Jess and Diggs in your mum's car in 2005 singing to Viva La Vida together.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so glad we've got to promote Coldplay on the pod, because they're a really small band and it's so good to like get them out there finally.
They'll be pleased with the exposure.
Well, I'm taking you. I'm taking you for granted. Well, I'm taking you. Well, I'm taking you for granted.
Let's talk then a little bit more, I think, about Julia Roberts. And I will take you once again back in time. Let's listen to what we said about Julia Roberts the first time round.
What annoyed me is that Julia Roberts is really, really similar for the first hour of the film. And she says nothing. And she's like, she only speaks when spoken to. And she's flat, boring, doesn't say any full sentences. And you're like, how is this person a real like celebrity or someone you'd fall in love with?
Oscar, I can't agree more. I don't, for the first half, you're just thinking, who is this person? What is her personality? Why are we falling in love with her?
I do agree with you guys, to be honest, that by the end of the film even, you still don't really know why they're together. Like, what do they have in common? No one knows.
Yeah.
Apart from that they're in this place at the same time in this moment. But I kind of feel like watching it, that the film is set in a simpler time when we don't have even mobile phones, there's no sort of dating apps. But if the film was a dating app, it would be Bumble, because the women have to make the first move, and like these men are kind of bumbling along and sort of trying their luck. But like really the cards are in the hands of Julia Roberts, of how she decides to react to Hugh Grant's character, and that's the case all the way through the film, really, and towards the end it changes. Spoiler alert, for people who haven't seen it. But I kind of feel like 2021 vision is like, we're on Hinge now. You need to have something in common. You need to find some things to like have rapport about. And maybe that's why it grates. But as a woman, I still have a place in my heart for Bumble. You know what I mean? So I'm quite happy to see that a woman having the power, and also like not having to give so much of herself away and like begging for the attention of the males, if you know what I mean. But I do think that it feels old-fashioned. And it is that classic thing of men fancying somebody because they're pretty, even though they don't know anything about that person. And that sustains the love interest the whole way through the film, even though she's behaved really poorly. So I kind of agree with you. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't like it because, and this maybe is more of a slight then on Hugh Grant's character, is that he fancies her because she's pretty and she is famous. And she has a big smile, and
it's a big smile.
A faint echo is in there.
Exactly.
As Hugh Grant famously said.
Indeed. And I wondered, I was watching this again because apparently they didn't like each other at all on set. And I was watching this film trying to be like, is this bad chemistry? And just a quick aside, what do you think of the chemistry between the two of them? Did it translate on screen they didn't like each other, or was that just rumour?
I don't know. I don't think it's the best chemistry, to be honest. Like, I think, for example, Hugh with Martine McCutcheon is a lot better chemistry
I
than
think
this.
So.
And probably Andy McDowell and Hugh, I'm not sure, have amazing chemistry either. And this is kind of a similar story where it's like the American comes from somewhere and just sort of lands in London, and then suddenly they meet, and then it's like, oh, well, we should have sex now. And then,
It's funny you mentioned Martine McCutcheon in that storyline in Love Actually, because I actually think that storyline has more in common with this, but the roles are reversed. So the male prime minister kind of falls into the life of this commoner, and she's supposed to fancy him because he's the prime minister. And it's interesting to see that, you know, the role reversal of the woman having the power kind of thing. But it's Richard Curtis doing the same thing again and again, isn't it? So that's
do you think Richard Curtis thought he was like really revolutionary in his story writing here, because he was like, I gave women the power by being the celebrity and reversing those roles? Or do you think it was just him, just like, I don't know, trying to get is the same old thing?
It's so funny because now with hindsight it feels like he was doing the same thing again and again, but some of my favourite artists in every sort of genre do that. Just make the same album or whatever again and again. And he does it, and he does it well, and in the 90s I think it probably was quite revolutionary. It's interesting to see that men can fall in love so genuinely, even though it's not really genuine because he's falling in love with the idea of Julia Roberts, but like be so flustered and so love struck and not move on for 6 months and all of these things that, you know, even in Bridget Jones, we just assume that only happens to women. And at the time, I think that was a really revolutionary idea that men could come across as love struck.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's other examples of that as well, where I was thinking about that. For example, that scene where there's those group of men in the restaurant who are sort of, you know, making all these horrible sexual jokes about Julia Roberts, and then Hugh Grant actually has the balls to stand up and be like, you know, that's not on. I'm watching that now and I'm like, oh God, this is just like horribly cringe. And like, I wouldn't even put this in a film if I was making one now, because I think that is quite crude and like just quite so sexist and stuff that you just wouldn't even put that in and have the scene of the man defending the woman. Whereas back then, it would be like normalized for men to be like having a beer, being like, oh, you know, I'd, you know, do this and that to her.
It's so fascinating because there's something I think as like a child of the 90s, and I'm like a few years older than you guys, that finds it really romantic, the idea that a guy could see this is an independent woman, she can stand up for herself, but I care, so I want to go and say something to these other men who are objectifying this person. Why should she have to? So I think either way that you chose to do the scene now, I would love to know what the reaction would be, because probably I'm really old-fashioned and I'm only a couple of years older than you, but to me that's still a really romantic idea. But probably things have moved on, and it's, as you say, better for the woman to be seen to be fighting her own battles, because women can obviously do that. So it's such an interesting choice.
Maybe it'd be the other way around, where first Julia Roberts gets up and tells them to shut up, and then Hugh comes in and sort of backs them up and be like, yeah, fuck you guys.
No, because then that's mansplaining, isn't it? Then it's like, because then it's like a woman going,
step
like,
aside.
Please can you not do this? I've got this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then he goes for it. Well, actually, I thought what you were going to say is probably now it would be a group of women saying crude things about Hugh Grant, and then Julia Roberts would have to go up to them and be like, excuse me, that's my man, stop talking about
You've nailed it. You've nailed it. Women objectifying other men. That's the 2021 thing.
Are you a business owner? Are you running a political campaign? Are you a furniture outlet having yet another sale? If the answer to any of those questions isn't no, then you can have your advertisement right here. The Taking You for Granted podcast gets over 100 listeners every single episode. For prices starting as low as 6 figures, you can have your advertisement right here. So what are you waiting for? Email takingyouforgranted@gmail.com today for a full price list, and you can have your advertisement right here.
Jess, is Hugh Grant good looking in this film? And what do you think of his drip, aka his clothes?
Drip.
Yes, I think he's super good looking. From the first scene where he has his light blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his like black crew neck, I think he wears at one point. Basically, wow. I think he looks great. I love his hair. And
love it.
Me and my sister used to really fancy Chandler from Friends. I think it was like series 3 or 4. Like 1998, 1999, he was very skinny. It actually later turned out that it was because he'd been addicted to prescription medication.
Yes.
And so he lost a lot of weight, but we didn't know that. We were too young. We were like, oh my God, this boy is so attractive. And it was the same sort of look that Hugh Grant has in this film. So clearly young me loved it, and that's not gone away. I think it looks great.
I love it.
Find an actor who does collared shirts and crew neck jumpers better.
It's not possible.
Can't do it.
Let's talk about Hugh Grant's character in this in a little bit more detail, and let's have, as we are in this episode, a little listen to what we said last time.
Anyone who says that Hugh plays the same role, typecasted, same clothes, posh, bumbling, in this one, you might have a point.
I do find it hard to disagree with you. That's all I say, apparently. We're all waiting for something a bit more exciting there.
Insightful.
Very insightful, very insightful. But we've mentioned 4 Weddings and a Funeral already today, and he plays a very similar character in that, I suppose very similar to how he plays in Love Actually as well. I mean, can you really argue with that in this film? Are we seeing anything new from Hugh? And also, what is his character like in general? Do we even like what the character he's playing in this scenario? Personally,
I really like the character that he's playing because I genuinely do think it was quite a revolutionary idea at the time. And probably loads of people will come for me for saying this, but like in the 90s, the idea that there could be a guy who was as emotionally intelligent as a woman and would be respectful to women. And like, you know, when Julia Roberts comes to stay with him when she's in trouble. He sleeps downstairs, and then, you know, Rhys Ifans goes to like have a crack, and he's like, no, can you not do that? She's like not in a good place. There's to me, there's something so romantic, and there was when I first watched it, about a woman being respected and looked after properly by a man, rather than just she's in a vulnerable place, so this is the moment where they're going to have their big sex scene, which often would happen in romantic comedies. So he is thoughtful, emotionally intelligent, polite. When she says no, he respects it, and that's sort of the crux of the film, isn't it? Is that when she says no, he takes that as no, and like that wasn't a thing that men did. The fact that that is a controversial idea, that a woman would be respected when she says no, and that's the whole point of the film. It, to me, is amazing, and it's still a message that we, like as women, want, because unfortunately men don't do that, and so he seems like such a great guy. However, he is quite boring. I don't like know very much about him as a character, and he takes ages to say anything.
Yes.
But what I would say is that I think he's similar to like all kind of good protagonists that have open minds where crazy things can happen to them. It's similar to like Harry Potter. You know, he's just like, oh, I'm a wizard, am I? Great, kind of thing. It's like, oh, this big celebrity has come into my life. Oh, great. And they're the best ones, but they're the ones that don't really say that. Like Harry Potter just basically has no personality for like the first 4 books. Things happen to him and he reacts, and that's sort of what's happening in this film as well.
I think that's the first time I've heard Hugh Grant compared with Harry Potter, which I'm really happy about.
Yeah.
But I think that is really interesting. Something you talked about is like the emotional intelligence. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And I think you're definitely right. Like he is a very like gentle character, and it's a different kind of view on masculinity in many ways, I think, which is quite interesting in this film.
Definitely. I mean, you're absolutely right, and it's the idea of saying no. I mean, how many romantic comedies are based off the idea that the girl said no, but the guy keeps trying in weird and wacky ways until he breaks her down, and they're together, and it's brilliant. Like, that's probably the basis of so many romantic comedies. I'm so glad that you've given me that reading of the film, because, you know, the 4-season scene where Hugh Grant is really sad for ages and stuff, that is an emotional intelligence that, like you say, Oscar, isn't associated with masculinity on screen. And so it's actually such a nice reading. And now I will go back to that film, and when I watch it in the future, with that in mind, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it more as a result.
Yeah, thanks for that. I actually will go away and think more carefully about it more next time I watch it.
Yes.
we were saying off air on this podcast, the majority of our listenership are female, are women, or female. At least they've clicked that box on wherever they're streaming on, female, and it's just 2 guys talking about another guy, you know, each week. So it is really nice to have a female's perspective, and perhaps that is why we haven't thought of that reading already.
I do think that you guys are both very emotionally intelligent guys, and like most of the people who are listening to this podcast would be able to tell that from the way that you talk about films and characters and things like that. So it probably doesn't occur to you that so many men are shit in that regard.
Indeed. However, I've just trapped you, because this is exactly what you did not say on the original voice memo. Let's have a listen.
2 boys reviewing a rom-com and then being annoyed that the storyline seems unrealistic and that the characters don't know each other well enough to fancy each other is like, duh. Do you know what I mean?
That's very sexist. Boys can review rom-coms.
Well, they can't, because they've got it wrong.
That's brilliant.
That is quality.
So fair as well.
But as we know, you were enraged, you were angry in the car, you were fist pumping, you were not very happy. So that's probably why you let your emotions get the better of you.
But it is fair enough, though, because we need more representation in the podcast. So really glad that we're getting this perspective here.
Yay!
Finally. Although it'll be once a year, max.
I love that it's taken me to call you a fuck for you to let a girl on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Apologies.
Taking he for granted. Taking he for granted. Taking he for granted. What did you think, lads? Were they taking he for granted?
At the end of the podcast, Jess, as you know, we ask, have we been taking Hugh for granted? Originally, this is what we had to say.
I'm sorry to be a party pooper on the Valentine's Day special. Don't go to bed all sad tonight. But I think we are taking Hugh for granted here.
I'm going to, for the sake of not just so we agree with each other every week, I'm going to say it's not taking Hugh for granted. Because I think at the end of the way I felt at the end of the film, there were moments that I enjoyed. There was good things about it. But I think it's a very, very contentious one, this one. Jess, are we taking Hugh for granted?
No.
Of course. Absolutely not. Has your love for Notting Hill wavered at all? Or will you watch it just as much as you always ever have?
I definitely will. I think it's aged well for the most part. And I actually think that Hugh Grant isn't the best part of the film. I still love him, but we're definitely not taking him for granted.
No, good. What about you, Oscar? Have you changed your...
I haven't changed. I still think that the film is taking Hugh for granted. But I really have been changed by that perspective. I think that that's going to stick in my brain. And I think I'm going to have to go and watch it again and think more carefully about it. I do think that, for me, Hugh is just a bit too bumbling in this film. I just prefer him in other stuff, and now we've watched so much of his stuff, Diggs. I mean, since that first podcast, we've watched another 30 Hugh Grant films, and there are probably 15 other performances that I prefer to him in Notting Hill, if I'm being completely honest. So for that reason, I think I am going to say we are taking Hugh for granted.
It's really tough for me because I've watched this film twice since that time we watched it for the original review. I watched it once with people and once today on my own. And it's really interesting that whenever I'm with people, I seem to enjoy it a lot more. Maybe because we're laughing, maybe because there's wine flowing.
Legend.
Maybe, but then when I watch it on my own in bed, which in some ways is perfect Notting Hill viewing, all cozy and cuddly, I watch it and I just think all my issues with it just crop back up again. However, what I will say, as like you, Oscar, is just your reading of Hugh's emotional intelligence. I will carry that with me into my next viewing, and I think I will enjoy it a lot more, regardless of whether I'm with people or not, as a result. So, thank you.
One thing I would like to add is that it is amazing still that this film came out 21 years ago. Name me a more famous or better received romantic comedy than Notting Hill. There aren't many. So it's
Love Actually, Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Absolutely not on both counts.
No.
It's a Stone Cold classic, and the fact that you've already seen it with other people, Diggs, in the interim since the last pod says a lot.
Well, to be fair, they were a bit like, you've got a podcast, you've got to watch Notting Hill with you, bro. I mean, actually, I put that voice on. It was Dad and his girlfriend. And his girlfriend was like, yo, we've got to watch Hugh Grant with you, bro.
I really wasn't expecting you to be like, yeah, the vino did flow or whatever, and then it was with your dad.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Good. Well, that has been a wonderful re-review of Hugh Grant film. Notting Hill. I'm trying. That's so Partridge. It's been so great to have you on, Jess, and thank you so much for sending that original voice memo, being so incensed. I thought, who better to have on for when we re-review the film?
Well, thank you very much. I've calmed down, and I'm now I've enjoyed myself. So thank you.
Great stuff. We will see you in another couple of weeks. Follow us on all the socials. Thank you so much again, Jess.
Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you so much again for listening, everyone. We'll see you very soon. Goodbye.
Taking Hugh for Granted is produced, edited and presented by Diggory Waite and Oscar Beardmore Gray. The producers of Taking Hugh for Granted would like to state that this podcast is in no way associated with the actor Hugh John Mungo Grant, nor does it endorse his views or represent him in any way. Instead, by creating this podcast, Oscar and Diggory hope to celebrate Hugh's illustrious career, reliving his old classics and shedding light on some of his hidden gems. Hugh, if you're listening, we hope you approve.